Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I want to talk about my top 10 favorite knife steels for EDC. It's been a while since I've talked about this, and my opinions have changed a little bit since the last time I did a video. I'm like many of you. I'm just a regular guy who carries a knife and uses it for regular stuff. I am not a metallurgist. I am not a knife maker. Like I said, I'm just a regular guy. I have my own preferences, and I understand that everybody has their own preferences, and that's perfectly okay. Some of you have specialized occupations, and that will, of course, require a specialized knife with a specialized steel. As Laren Thomas has, recently pointed out to the entire knife community, geometry plays a much bigger role than the steel or even the heat treat, but of course the optimization of all three is really what's important if you want to get the most out of your steel. I'm going to be providing examples of knives that are more or less available, so you'll be able to find these more or less down in the description. If you want to check them out, it does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Keep in mind, edge retention is not the most important thing to me. So if you're surprised that, X steel, it has such great edge retention, right? Why is it so much lower than the other knives on the list? It's because it's the overall balance of everything that is important. This is something that's really difficult for newer people to understand, is that edge retention is not always the most important thing. With that all in mind, let's go ahead and get started. These are in order. Let's start off here with a great example of what I was talking about. CBM 20 CV on this ProTech Malibu, which is available right now. ProTech does a great job of the heat treat on CBM 20 CV. This is the same thing as M390 and 204P, which is news to a lot of people. CBM 20 CV is made by Crucible here in the United States. 204P is made by Carpenter here in the United States, and M390 is made by Bowler. These are all more or less the same composition. They all, heat treated the same way at the same geometry, will perform almost exactly the same. Why is CBM 20 CV number 10? It's still a great steel. If you're new to my channel, you might be thinking, how could this be? I thought this was like the best steel, right? And if you are not new to my channel, you'll think, why is this even on your list? You crap on this steel all the time. I don't like when this steel is properly heat treated up there, anywhere from the 61 to 62 territory. I don't like the amount of work that I have to put into it after it's worn down and how frustrating and chippy it can be in my experience. But man, when it is properly heat treated, it will perform, and it's also very, very stainless. This has been the top dog, the most preferred steel if you're like, oh my gosh, it's so expensive, but oh, look at that, it's 20 CV, so of course the price is justified. People forget that you can get this steel on knives that sometimes cost less than $100, and in some cases, it's actually got a fair heat treat on it, right? This is yesterday's ultimate steel, and it's still very good though. It's still good. I just don't like when it's time to sharpen it, and if it is properly heat treated, I don't like how nasty it can be. It's not the friendliest steel to touch back up, right? Good steel, still good, but definitely not the king of the knife world. Moving on here to number 9, and that's going to be 154 CM / CPM 154, which is relatively the same thing. It's just powder formed. And then we can also put RWL 34 in there. There's a number of other steels that are the same. This is the Kaiser Brat and is a very inexpensive example of 154 CM. This is an insanely balanced steel, and it is one of the very best steels that you can get in the sub $100 territory. Kaiser does a great job with it. It doesn't require a super duper hard heat treatment. Obviously not going to hold an edge nearly as long as CBM 20 CV, but it is stainless, it is tough, and my God, is it easy to touch up. I mean, just a couple of passes on the old strop there, and you're usually good to go unless you've been, out there like an idiot chopping a cinder block, which some people sit around and do. Unless as long as you've been using it like a knife, you're good to go. Moving on here, perhaps the very best budget steel in existence, and that's going to be 14C28N on this Vosteed Raccoon, which is absolutely one of the best budget knives. I want to say, what is it, 65 bucks? My God. 14C28N is, it's like everything that I like about 154 CM, but in my experience, has slightly better edge retention. I don't know if that's actually factually true or if I've just been experiencing different, varying heat treats that have been in favor of the opposite of what it's supposed to be, or the geometry is just really good. 14C28N is fantastic. Laren Thomas, who we talked about earlier, an actual metallurgist, has a great write-up of this and why it's so good. This is like the perfectly balanced. I mean, if you rolled a D&D character, right, like correlated to a perfectly balanced knife steel, like that's, you would have to have the most perfectly balanced roll, right? Corrosion resistance, toughness, your hardness, ease of sharpening, right? Potential edge retention. It's just really, really fantastic. And it usually can outshine a lot of steels that are held up, you know, high on a pedestal for no reason. This stuff at the right geometry, which the Raccoon is such an incredible geometry. For $65, you know, a lot of people could buy something like this and literally be done forever. We're going to go to number 7 here. It is so sad that we don't see this steel more often. This is an old Cold Steel Code 4, which you can still buy, but these guys were in CTSXHP. CTSXHP is a steel that is not new, much like 20CV. And do you know when the patent came out for 20CV? Right? If you didn't know, it was like 1990, or was it in the late 80s? I just to, you know, take another quick dump on 20CV for people who like, oh, shining golden god, CPM 20CV. Yeah, it's old. It's super old. But anyways, CTSXHP, I don't know how old it is, but it's been around for a while. CTSXHP has been accurately described as a stainless D2, which is great because D2 has excellent properties. It's just not quite stainless. So getting those stainless properties and then some with CTSXHP is always great. It's also traditionally not a super difficult steel to heat treat. So Cold Steel did an excellent job with it and a number of other companies. I don't know why we don't see XHP around nearly as much, because it really is great. Moving on here to number 6, which is going to be LMAX being shown off by this super cool Riot XOM gravity knife, which is absolutely available right now. To be honest with you, this one's in 3V, but these are widely available in LMAX right now. My experience with LMAX, and again, I'm not a metallurgist, but my experience with LMAX is that it falls somewhere between S35VN and CPM 20CV when it comes to edge retention. It's just a little bit tougher than CPM 20CV. It's still a little bit tougher to sharpen than S35VN. Sometimes it's kind of back and forth. It's not perfectly consistent, but I like LMAX a lot and actually prefer it over 20CV, which is going to be confusing to a lot of people because LMAX, if a knife is offered like for example, Shirogorov knives will offer their premium production knives in M390, and then they'll offer, you know, their Ursus line will be in LMAX or something, leading people to believe that there is a $300 or $400 difference in the steel alone, which is just flat out untrue. These steels, both from Bowler, cost almost exactly the same, but since in the minds of the average person, edge retention is king, CPM 20CV often gets hailed as the more premium steel. I would much rather EDC LMAX, and I think it's excellent. It works with a wide variety of different geometries. This knife comes in dagger ground and tanto, etc. And I think it works really well. And it's honestly, as weird as this is and as illegal as it is in some places, so check your local laws, it actually works really, really well as an EDC knife. So great stuff. Number 5, we have to include Crewwear. Honestly, Crewwear is, let me look at this. It's the only non-stainless steel on this list. I used to be much more heavily in favor of non-stainless steels, especially steels like 3V and M4, and those are great steels. You're not going to see those steels on this list, and it's because after a while, after carrying those steels a lot, I used to think, we don't have that much of a problem with that stuff in Kansas, right? I was wrong. After a while, you EDC stuff like that a lot, and you go outside and you work with it, and your pocket gets sweaty, your hand gets sweaty. It will, right? It will corrode, and that's something that bothers me. And that doesn't bother everybody, right? And this can, of course, over time damage your blade, right? So while they're still very, very good, they require a lot, at least in my experience, they do require a lot more maintenance than I had previously thought years ago when I had done this video, right? So I really have to baby those non-stainless steels. Crewwear, while it's got a confusing composition, it kind of suggests like maybe you'd have to baby it. Not really. It's pretty, I would still, like if you can get it coated, I would still say, but my God, is it well balanced? And it's so tough. Like for this general balance of composition, Crewware will really shrug off some of the nastiest, things that you can do within reason when it comes to a folding knife. Number 4? Yeah, number 4. And that's going to be S35VN. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to this is on the Spartan Harzy, by the way, which is absolutely available. Expensive American knife, but really great example. S35VN and S45VN, and I'm lumping them together because S45VN is the newest kid on the block in this territory, right? If we're talking about S30V, S35VN, and S45VN, S45VN is kind of like what happens when you combine S30V and S35VN, but it's got a crap load of extra corrosion resistance. Some people will kind of, you're going a little heavy on the crap load part of it, right? But it's closer to M390 in terms of corrosion resistance, but it just feels like S35VN with better edge retention and even better corrosion resistance. But S35VN is still absolutely an excellent steel. Absolutely. And it might be a bit tougher than S45VN. I can't remember where the trade-off is, but they're all so close. Very, very good stuff. You could buy a knife in one of these steels and be done. Because it's so versatile. It's going to give you that edge retention that you want. Obviously, continuous cutting and ease of cutting. You're going to want thinner geometry than something like the Spartan Harzy, but it also has a good amount of toughness, and it's not so difficult to resharpen that like a heavier or thicker geometry that you're going to abuse a little bit more. It doesn't create an impossible situation when it comes time to resharpen it. I love the Spartan Harzy. It's a big, thick, robust, this is the kind of knife that I'm not as, scared to kind of drop and mark up and, things like this. I'm not so worried about, having that edge abused, because I know when it comes time to sharpen it, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And I know that this knife can absolutely take it. Moving on here, the more I use this stuff, I wasn't sure, but if you want to know what the new M390 is, it's MagnaCut, showing off, this is number 3. This is being shown off in the Tactile Knifeco Maverick, which I still have not reviewed. Tactile Knifeco does an excellent heat treatment on this. This is Laren Thomas's steel. He created this, right? And again, I'm not a metallurgist, but so I was like, I gotta get a feel for this. MagnaCut is insanely well balanced, but it also is a kind of magical. It's really weird, right? I've used some MagnaCut at lower Rockwell, and it's okay, and it's pretty easy to touch up. And then like this Maverick, which has a super high, I think it's a 63 Rockwell. Holy crap, the edge retention is wild, but it's still not that hard to touch up. It's really bizarre. This Maverick, this is an early one. I think the newer ones have, we got some crap on there from something, I don't know. The newer ones have all the quality control updates, but this guy, the factory edge, I was like, it's a little bit, drug it across the strop, razor sharp, and just kept being razor sharp. Unbelievable. It also can be, technically I think MagnaCut can rust, but it's gonna be tough. MagnaCut is gonna resist that pretty well. The balance on it is really weird. It's kind of wizard stuff. I would imagine it wouldn't surprise me if over time MagnaCut actually gets bumped up higher on my personal list, but my experience is pretty limited. As far as a decent geometry and a really high heat treat on this, the best example that I have is the Maverick here. And this has been very, very impressive as far as the blade performance is gone. So this is definitely one of my favorite steels. And you can already see it in the knife world. It is becoming the new M390. It's becoming the new thing that everybody wants their knife in. Just a regular dude who may or may not sometimes wear jean shorts. All right, don't judge me. You might sometimes wear jean shorts, all right? Back off. Moving on here to number 2, S90V, perhaps the most misjudged steel by me ever. I had a super low opinion of S90V for a long time, and I must have really had some crappy stuff. I must have had an S90V blade that was so hard that it was just ready to shatter. My old opinion of S90V shown off here in this custom bug out, but let me tell you, if you want a recommendation for an S90V knife right now, get the teal PM2. Mine here is an S30V, but I'm showing it just so you can see a PM2. That is probably the best geometry, best heat treat, lowest price S90V on the market. I'll link it down below. That's the one you want to go with. S90V I used to think was just so brittle. It just touched anything. It touched paper or paper would sneeze and S90V would shatter. I was wrong. I just had a weird, I think I had S90V. It was so high that it just ended up crappy. Now, S90V is not easy to sharpen, right? It's also not going to have the same optimal range as 20CV. A lot of people look and see that companies are heat treating this from 59 to 61 and they go, oh, that's bad. That's bad. I've heard anything below 60 is bad. It's not the same for every steel, right? This steel, much like 20CV, its original intended application was not for pocket knives. It was for something else. S90V and S110V, I think, were originally created for industrial food prep, and at some point someone was like, hey, let's put this on a knife, right? So for a knife, right, I think the Rockwell hardness for its original intended application is even lower, but for a pocket knife, you want this stuff right around there, 59 to 61. Some people will say 60, 62. I think 62 might be a bit high. 60, 61 is probably about really, really great, right? 59 is all right. When this is properly heat treated, like this bug out, I assume that is, oh my gosh. The edge retention on this stuff, it shatters really good M390. S90V shatters it, and weird enough, it's tough enough that it won't chip as often. When you get a good, this bug out this is my size comparison bug out, and it gets used all the time down here. It's not babied, right? This stuff is still, get a piece of cardboard here. This stuff will still easily go through, no problem. I don't know how long I've had this bug out, but I have never, outside of just touching it up here and there, I have never had to resharpen it. Now, I'm not taking this thing out and pounding it into friggin' my driveway or anything like that, but using it like a knife, S90V is great. I think it's, again, I think you should go with the Para 3 or PM2, but wow, it's not going to be fun to resharpen, but at least when you do it, you're going to get a lot of life out of it. Moving on to my absolute number one favorite. This is my favorite knife steel of all time, shown off here on this Kunwu Tao sheep's foot, and that's going to be Vanx. Why do I like this? Is the S Tao sheep's foot Tao, right? You can get this. A lot of Kunwu knives have Vanx, and they're heat treating it really well, which is why I'm showing it here on this knife. Vanx essentially cannot rust, right? Now, a lot of times with this specialty cannot rust type of steel, what you end up with is, yeah, it can't rust, but it's got a butt like H1. Wow, saltwater steel, right? But it's like butter or tin foil. No, you'll get good edge retention. In fact, really shockingly good edge retention out of something like the S Tao. But it's also very, very easy to touch up. In fact, I really don't notice that maybe it's a little somewhere between S35VN and like 14C28N. It's just okay. It's just always ready to just be stropped without giving you much of a problem. If you have to sharpen it, it doesn't give you much of a problem. You can get a burr, you can get a lip really easily and just flip over and go back and forth. Right? It's just easy. It's ready to go. That with the worry-free, I can take this knife out, especially something that's titanium, right? Take this knife out and just use it, get sweaty, maybe it falls out of my pocket into a puddle of lemon water. It doesn't really matter, right? I like Vanx. Not everybody likes the balance of Vanx, but Vanx is a very, very premium steel that's hard to find on any knife under $300, which is, again, why I'm showing this. But, wow, when you can get it, and if they're heat treating it correctly, man, it is really, really good stuff. This is currently my favorite steel for EDC ever. I think, this is the type of topic that is, no matter who's talking about it, there are a million opinions, and everybody's opinion is valid. So let me know what your favorite steels are, or your one favorite steel is. Write down in the comments. I'd love to hear it and your reasoning why. Like I said, as much as I can will be listed down in the description, so you guys can go down there and check it out if you want to. Thanks so much for watching. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.